Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at the question of history, which is what is history? And we know that history is the story of how people have dealt with scarcity constructed from evidence found in sources. But we've been talking about this word scarcity, and let's dive deeper in what scarcity is. We know the definition that it's unlimited wants and needs with limited resources, but we really haven't gotten into what that actually means. So let's get a closer look at that. Let's focus first on unlimited wants and needs and what they are. Every group of people, starting with a family, develops its own beliefs and practices known as culture. And culture is, again, simply put, beliefs and practices of a group of people. And then that family gets its own ideas of what family is, how to deal with friends, if it's an honest or dishonest kind of character of a family, are they self reliant or dependent? There are issues of religion, how they engage with the community, what they believe in growth, those kinds of things. Eventually, families congregate, get together, intermingle, mix, and you get a community. And that community starts to create its own culture, where individuals not only develop the culture, but overall society develops a culture. And now you have towns and cities and states and countries kind of getting this understanding about what does it mean to have a family, traditional or diverse? What kind of friends do you accept or not accept into your group? How do you feel about work or what work is? Are you honest or do you not trust your neighbor or the government? Are you self-reliant or are you more into like being dependent? Are you an independent community or are you communal? Are you a religious community or are you more secular? You believe in other things. Speaking of community, do you engage a lot with your community? Do you hold events? Do you believe that as a community in growth? If so, what kind? And what about the climate and the environment that exists within your community? All this is culture. And all of this could be different depending on where you are. There are some places that believe that we should go back to everybody growing their own food and having a garden. While in other communities, it's like, no, I work the earth already and I actually want to get away from having a garden and growing my own food. And there are some communities that are like, we need alternative forms of energy that don't produce any pollution. And there are other communities that are like, well, wait a minute. I don't even have air conditioning and I like cheap energy because I want to experience things like air conditioning. All right. So really the culture depends on your community. And then your culture depends on how you address your needs and wants. And a need is simply something the body needs to survive, whether that has to be food, water, clothing, and a safe place to live. If you don't have those things, your body will be in danger, will shut down, or you're in danger of getting killed. A want is something that is desired. It's a car, books, refrigerator, smartphones. If you don't have them, your life might get more uncomfortable. It might get less fun. It might be harder, but if you don't have it, you won't necessarily die. And realize that in every society, these have to be met before I even consider these things. So if I don't have water, I really don't care about having a car to drive. If I don't have food or if I'm going to get killed every night potentially where I live, I don't care about learning how to read. So you need the needs met before you get the wants dealt with. Now that we have the unlimited wants and needs, now what we do is we talk about resources, right? And in history, we look at resources as factors of production, all right? And there are three of them. And factors of production are basically just resources used to make goods and services. And goods being physical objects that you can touch, and services being actions one person performs for another. Throughout history, resources have been used to make things and provide experiences. And what we do here in history is we break it down into three sections. One is land. Throughout history, we have dealt with land. What is land? Well, land resources are things like animals, plants, things that produce food for us. They're not like hamburgers, it's the cow that provides the meat for the burger. All right. It's not the house, it's the wood that comes from trees. It's water, it's wheat, it's oil and gas, fish. Anything that's natural, a gift from nature, is considered land. Land is super important because it determines where we live. Why is it Ukiah exists here in the way it exists? It's because of the land. We have a valley, it has very good agriculture, it has good weather, it has a river nearby. And that geographic form allows a town to thrive here. Another thing that's important about land is it provides the food that we eat, and we now control that to a much better extent, to where we produce a lot of food from very little land compared to a long time ago. Land also provides us energy. It started with burning wood for energy, then it went to coal, then oil, then natural gas, then water and nuclear and wind and solar and hydrogen. Land, nature provides us with these things that allow us to reap the benefits of a developed society. Okay. The second economic factor, the resource, is labor. And labor is human, mental, and physical effort. Anything that people do willingly is considered labor. Labor cannot be a slave, because labor, that person's not doing that work willingly. So labor has to be willing human, mental, and physical effort. Can't be robots, can't be a horse or anything like that. It's got to be a human. So, what is labor? Labor is any talent or knowledge or skills or training or creativity or energy or judgment, all those things, that counts as labor. Everything you do is labor. Okay. That means if you're making a sandwich, it's labor. If you're making the Empire State Building, it's labor. If you're making a paper airplane, that's labor. If you're flying an actual plane, that's labor. If you're somebody that's studying to be an EMT in Scrubs first responders class, that's labor. If you're actually learning how to be a doctor, that's labor. But so is the development of religion by people over the course of history. That's a form of labor. Developing ideas and philosophy. What is beauty? What is value? What is real? You know, who are we? How should we be governed? That's all labor. And finally, the creative development, inventing things, developing technology, that's all part of the process of labor. So anytime you get humans doing things, that is labor. The last resource is called capital. And capital is often the most confusing thing, but just think about it as this: everything that has ever been made to make other things, that's capital. So it's goods produced by people used to produce other goods and services. So scissors make it easier to cut people's hair. That's capital. An airplane makes it easier for us to fly longer distances. That's capital. Hammer and nails make it easier for us to construct things. That's capital. A crane makes it easier for us to lift things. That's capital. Smartphone does a ton of different things. That's capital. A warehouse allows us to store things and then transport them to other locations in an organized fashion. That is all capital. And understand that capital evolves. And when capital evolves, it makes people more productive. So we started by counting on our fingers. And then it went to an abacus, and then a calculator, and then a smartphone. And because it makes so quick calculations, we can actually do other things instead of spending our time counting on our fingers. Washing machines developed over time to where it would take hours to wash clothes. Now you just throw your clothes in a machine and step away and do something else. That's capital. It used to be in a warehouse, you had to have people moving things physically from one point to another. And then it became electronic, and then it became robots. That's capital. It allows us to do other things. Okay. And by the way, capital makes land more productive because we have things like genetically modified organisms, GMOs, we have drip irrigation. We have this green line is the percentage of land used to grow things. This brown line is the percentage of agricultural production that we've done in a country. We keep on growing things, but using less land to do that. That is because capital has made our land more productive with new technology and different things that make growing more productive. Now, capital also changes our overall society. Forever, all we did pretty much to survive was farm and ranch. And then there was a point when capital was developed, like the plow and the hoe. And eventually, we got to a point to where uh, we were getting out of just growing agriculture. And of course, agriculture is just growing crops and raising animals. And entire societies were around doing this because this is what you had to do to survive. But we got to a point where we became so good at it that you didn't need so many people growing stuff, And eventually people went from growing stuff to making stuff. And this got into the Industrial Revolution. And then we just started to make all kinds of products. And then factories popped up, and factories started making more and more and more products. You didn't need a single individual to do something over and over and over again. Eventually, you created a system where people would do independent things. And these factories produced goods like cars and salt and books and pencils and computers and deodorant and you name it. Okay. And eventually we got so good at producing things that people went and did something else. And so what they did is provide services. And now the economies in the world, almost all of them start in agriculture, then they go to industry, and where they get really wealthy is when they're just doing services. Okay. So then services are an action performed for someone else. So people don't work as much in factories. Now they provide an action for somebody. They're dentists and teachers and plumbers and construction workers and salespeople, and they make music and art and movies and all these different kinds of things. So now, because of capital, because it's done so well, people don't make as much steel for hotels, but they work in hotels. People don't like sit in factories and make tools for hospitals, but they work in hospitals. Okay. People don't make and grow as much food, but they work in the food industry as waiters, waitresses, cooks, that kind of things, hospitality workers. Okay. Now, what this has created is that we have all of this, our economies and economies around the world, less agriculture based, less industry based, and much more based in services, not goods, not agriculture anymore. And that's how we deal with scarcity. You have your three factors of production: land, labor, and capital.